Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's do the prayers before our class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo, Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswa, Tatsavitruvarenayam, Bargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Naha, Prachodayat, Astoma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamya, Om Sena Bhavatu, Sena Bhunatu, Saviryam Karvavahi, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidveshavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's open our books. Uddhava Gita. And we are on chapter 14, page number 438. And the title of this chapter is Pure Devotional Service Surpasses Knowledge and Detachment. So Bhakti. So whether it's a Vairagya or whether it's a Jnana, the ultimate goal is the love for God. That's a devotion. So we are on verse number 25. Lord Krishna is saying, Yadi kuriyat pramaden yogi karma vigrahitam yogenev dahed aham na anyat tatra kadachana. If a yogi, due to carelessness, performs some abominable activity, he should nullify the sinful reaction simply by continuing his engagement in yoga. He need not undergo severe penance or adopt some other method to purify himself. So that means the yoga sadhana is the one which is purifying us. Here and there we might make a little mistake. We don't have to do any prashchit. That's what he's saying. Stick to the yoga sadhana. This question may arise that if one who is detached from material life, along with its prescribed duties, by chance commits a sinful act, then how can he be freed from the reaction of sin without undergoing atonement, which is the prescription of the Karamukanda sections of the Vedas? The answer is given here that simply by continuing his practice of yoga, all sinful reactions will be burned to ashes. Sridhar Swami has said that for a devotee, all reactions of sinful activities can be nullified simply by hearing and chanting the holy names of the Supreme Lord. It is stated in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Only a rare person who has adopted complete unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. Elsewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, one who has thus given up all other engagements and has taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very dear to the Lord. Indeed, if such a surrendered soul accidentally commits some sinful activities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated within everyone's heart, immediately takes away the reaction to such sin. The word yogi in this verse refers to both the Jnana yogi and the Bhakti yogi. So anybody who's on the path of yoga is calling it a yogi. The activities of the conditioned souls are of two kinds, pious and sinful. If an honest person accidentally commits some sinful activities, see, the key word is accidentally. Okay, sometimes things happen accidentally. We might walk over some bug on the street or hit some other creature accidentally. The reactions to those sins can be counteracted simply by engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord. So keep on doing the bhakti. Stay attached. There is no need for a devotee of the Supreme Lord to undergo atonement as a separate endeavor. Okay, so just stay on the path of connecting yourself with God, and that's yoga. Verse number 26. Sve sve adhikare yanishta saguna parikirtita कर्म नाम जाते है अशुद्धा नाम अनेन नियमाकृता गुण दोष विधानेन संग नाम त्याजनेच्छ्यः. For an aspiring transcendentalist, the sincere observance of his practice constitutes piety, and the neglect of his spiritual practices constitutes sin. With this understanding of good and evil, one should detach himself from activities of sense gratification by a sincere practice of his discipline. How can a yogi be relieved of all sinful reactions? Simply by continuing his practice of yoga, with no necessity for performing any other atonement. In this verse, Shri Krishna explains the actual standard of piety. A yogi who steadfastly executes his yoga practice while remaining aloof from the duties prescribed under the jurisdiction of Karam Kand is actually pious, and one who gives up such practice is actually sinful. It is widely declared in the scriptures that Jnana and Bhakti are competent to destroy all kinds of sinful reactions, so that Jnanis and Bhagats are never required to undergo atonement as a separate endeavor. If one does so, he commits two faults: the fault of giving up his prescribed duty and the fault of adopting another's duty. Actually, all classes of transcendentalists, and especially devotees, are devoid of the propensity to commit sinful activities. Even if by chance they do so, the powerful purifying effects of their respective processes destroy their sinful reactions without difficulty. It is the verdict of the Vedic literature that one is prohibited to see the apparent faults of one who is continuously engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, even if he accidentally commits sinful activities. A devotee is situated in the transcendental position, and so he does not possess material qualities, nor is he subjected to considerations of material sins or piety. Because Jnanis are supposed to be firmly situated in the mode of goodness, they also are considered to be beyond the influence of the baser qualities of passion and ignorance. So that is like a Rajsikta and a Tamsikta. On the other hand, karmis are by nature impure, so that the Karma Kand section of the Vedas prescribe rules and regulations for their guidance and purification. Fruitive workers are attached to their homes and material bodies, and thus have performed countless sinful activities, beginning from their birth. For this reason, the Vedas instruct fruitive workers to continue acting with material attachment, but in a way that will gradually elevate them to the mode of goodness. This will be more elaborately described in the next chapter. The living entity must execute his duties according to his position under the three modes of material nature. When one engages in an occupation other than that which is prescribed for him, this creates a discrepancy. The performance of prescribed duties and the avoidance of forbidden acts enables attached materialists to gradually become detached from the spirit of enjoying the fruit of their labor. As soon as one performs forbidden or sinful acts, distressful conditions are created. Just to free the conditioned soul from his distressful condition of life, the scriptures prescribe rules and regulations to guide his behavior. As long as one fails to awaken his loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord, he will continue to desire the four objectives of human life, placing him under the control of the Vedic rules and regulations. When one is fully engaged in a process of transcendental realization, however, the mundane conceptions of good and bad no longer apply. Beautiful explanation. Verse number 27 and 28. जात श्रद्धो मत कथासु निर्विष्णा सर्व कर्मसु वेद दुखात्म कान कामान परित्यागे अपि अनीश्वरः ततो भजेत मां प्रीतः श्रद्धालुर्दृढ़ निश्चया युष्मानश्च तान् कामान दुःखो दर्वश्च च गृह्यान्. Having awakened his faith in the narrations of my glories, understanding the futility of all material activities, and knowing that sense gratification ultimately leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all kinds of sensual diversions, my devotee should remain satisfied and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in material enjoyment, my devotee knows that such activity simply leads to a miserable result, and so he sincerely repents such activities. So anytime our mind, if it's taken away from God, we should think about it. Why this Maya has attracted me so much? I'm here to love God. Here the Lord describes the primary characteristic of a devotion service. A devotee naturally becomes indifferent to worldly activities and Vedic prescriptions because he knows that these will ultimately award him distress. He knows that material desires are sources of all miseries. If a devotee, despite understanding this, is unable to completely renounce activities of sense gratification, he should still engage in the service of the Supreme Lord with firm determination. So that's why it's always a good idea to have a life with a good discipline. Every morning, evening, some prayers, sitting at the feet of the God, with some kind of a loving devotional routine. He should not become depressed, thinking that his devotional service is inadequate. A devotee thinks, even if I meet with so many impediments and even though I am full of offenses, I will never for a moment give up the service of the Lord. Fruitive activities and mental speculation are useless, and so I will never accept these as my paths. I am still very attached to the objects of this world, and I know that this will only bring me misery. I must go on in this way, simply hope for that day when the Lord will become merciful towards me. Even if due to material sentiment a devotee associates with his wife and children and thus indulges in sense gratification, he thinks, alas, this material enjoyment creates many anarthas because it is opposed to my advancement in the Lord's devotional service. Although I had promised many times to give up this material enjoyment, I will indulge in sense gratification from time to time. By hearing discussions of the Supreme Lord's glories, one is liberated from the desire to enjoy the fruits of karma. Only those who are faithfully engaged in hearing and chanting the holy names of the Supreme Lord can understand that desires for material enjoyment are the causes of distress. When even after trying to give up such distressful activities, devotees fail to completely do so, they should faithfully go on serving the Supreme Lord with determination. Devotees condemn the miserable condition that arises from material activities, and while trying to give up such bad association, they engage in the service of the Supreme Lord with determination. There is actually nothing inauspicious in the devotional service of the Lord. Occasional difficulties experienced by a devotee are due to his previous material activities. That means our own karma. Sometimes the outcome of those karma brings some hurdles. On the other hand, the endeavor for sense gratification is completely inauspicious. The sense gratification and devotional service are directly opposed to each other. In all circumstances, one should therefore remain the Lord's sincere servant, always believing in His mercy. Then one will certainly go back home, back to Godhead. So this choice we always have. Do we want to love this world or do we want to love God? Okay. Verse number 29. प्रोक्तेन भक्ति योगेन भजतो मासकृन् मुने कामा हृदया नश्यन्ति सर्वे मयि हृदि स्थिते. When one constantly engages in my service, as described by me, his heart becomes firmly fixed in me, so that all material desires that may have been present in his heart are vanquished without separate endeavor. So we don't have to do anything else. We got to just keep on pouring the name of God with love in our heart. That's all we have to do. Before we know all the attachment towards this Maya, it will go away. No material desires will be there in the heart. One may question, do not the devotees of the Lord suffer material miseries just like other people? The answer is given in this verse. Definitely not. The material desires that are present within the heart of a devotee are gradually destroyed as they go on faithfully hearing the glories of the Lord and engaging in his devotional service. A devotee of the Lord situates Shri Krishna on a beautiful throne within his heart and there offers the Lord constant service, just as the rising sun gradually eliminates all traces of darkness. The Lord's presence within the heart causes all material desires there to weaken and eventually disappear. So that is the effect of the Nam. The senses are continuously engaged according to the proclivities of the mind. To that, material desires enter the mind one after another. Those who are devotees 24 hours a day engage in the service of the Lord by hearing and chanting his glories with transcendental faith will find that such material desires gradually diminish. Instead of trying to enjoy independently, the devotees are convinced that the Lord is the supreme enjoyer and all others are meant to partake in his enjoyment. So all our actions always think that we are doing it for the happiness of the God, the Lord. Beautiful verse, and it is next one, verse number 30, and we read it in other scriptures also. Vidyate hridaya granthi chidyante sarva sanshya kshiyante cha asya karmani mai drishtehe khilatmani. The knot in the heart is cut asunder. All misgivings are slashed to pieces. And the chain of action and reaction is stopped when I am understood to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all the problems get solved. So, Hridaya Granthi, we learned about this in Vivek Chudamani. Hridaya Granthi is not ignorance, desires, and actions. Those are the three knots of the Hridaya Granthi. So the knot in the heart is cut asunder. All misgivings are slashed to pieces, and the chain of action and reaction is stopped when I am understood to be the Supreme Personality of God. The knot created when one's heart is bound to illusion by false identification with the material body is cut to pieces when one attains the stages of nishtha or ruchi without separate endeavor. Engagement in devotional service quickly eliminates all material desires within the heart. just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. The word karmani in this verse refers to sinful reactions that have not yet fructified. In this regard, the Gopal Tapani Upanishad states that bhakti means devotional service to the Lord that is free from desire for material profit, either in this life or in the next. Being devoid of such inclinations, one should fully absorb the mind in the Supreme Lord. This is the actual purpose of Nashkarmya. You remember this Nashkarmya word comes in Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So when one understands a supreme absolute truth to be the ultimate shelter of everyone, one's desire for enjoying the fruits of karma will gradually diminish. By full engagement in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord, the knot of false ego within the heart is destroyed. And false ego, knot of false ego is avidya, ignorance. And all doubts are removed. The Supreme Lord is the shelter of all kinds of rasa. Indeed, he is the personification of all transcendental mallows. By remaining satisfied by the pleasure of engaging in devotional service, one can give up the desire for mundane enjoyment and mental speculation. Verse number 31. तस्मान मद भक्ति युक्तस्य योगिनो वे मद आत्मनः न ज्ञानम न च वैराग्यम प्रायश्रेयो भवेद. For one who has fixed his mind upon me, being constantly engaged in my devotional service, mere renunciation and the cultivation of knowledge are not considered means for attaining perfection. Okay, so those are just the means. The goal is the love for God. Devotional service has the potency to destroy the knots of false ego within the heart without one's taking help from any other process. Therefore, the devotees of the Lord are not interested in cultivating knowledge or practicing renunciation outside the purview of devotional service. Devotional service is the only all-auspicious path, whereas the cultivation of knowledge and dry renunciates are of no value without connection to devotional service. By chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, the devotee automatically realizes all knowledge. And as the devotee's attachment to the Lord increases, he automatically gives up attachment for the inferior material nature. So it's like when you get attached to the higher, the lower falls out. Knowledge and renunciation are products of the mode of goodness, whereas devotional service is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. If one engages in devotional service, then it is a fault to separately cultivate knowledge and practice renunciation. Just as attachment and envy are byproducts of ignorance, knowledge and renunciation are naturally attained for one who is engaged in devotional service. Because knowledge of the absolute truth and renunciation of material enjoyment are concomitant factors of devotional service. Devotees become knowledgeable and detached without separate endeavor. This is confirmed elsewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So they are like a byproduct, so it just happens. So the goal is the love for God. That should not be ignored. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things, these three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality, God. In the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. By the use of the word praya, generally, in this verse, it appears that in some cases, in the primary state of Shant Bhakti, it is not inauspicious to accept the process of cultivation of knowledge and renunciation. Still, devotional service ensures liberation without any impediment. This is the opinion of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is another beautiful Bhakti scripture, small Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. One can never achieve real benefit simply by the cultivation of knowledge while remaining indifferent to the service of the Supreme Lord. When one is fully devoted to the Supreme Lord, he is on the platform of complete auspiciousness. There is no possibility for attaining factual benefit as long as the impersonal conception of the absolute truth remains prominent. Simply by the execution of pure devotional service, genuine knowledge and proper renunciation are obtained. The constitutional duty of the spirit soul is to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Transcendental knowledge and factual renunciation are fully manifest in those who are continuously engaged in the service of the Lord. Verse number 32 and 33, they go together. Yat karmi bhir yat tapsaha Gyan Viragyat Sachayat Yogen Dan Dharmen Shreyobhir Tater Api Sarvam Mad Bhakti Yogen Mad Bhakto Labtejasa Swarga Apvargum Mad Dham Kathishint Yad Vanchati. Whatever can be attained by other processes of elevation that are recommended in the scriptures can be easily achieved by my devotees. If my devotee desires liberation from material existence or residence in the heavenly planets, he achieves these without difficulty. So this is the power of this kind of a love for God. Can have anything. A question may be raised: if a devotee who is faithfully engaged in the Lord's devotional service and thus has no interest in performing karma or jnana, and yet desires to go to heaven or attain liberation from material existence, what will he achieve? The reply is given in these two verses. By following other auspicious paths, such as traveling to holy places of pilgrimage, one can attain Salokya Mukti, or a residence in the eternal abode of the Supreme Lord. Whatever can be gained by the various paths of perfection is easily achieved by the devotees by means of their execution of devotional service. If a devotee so desires, he can easily attain worldly happiness, purification of the heart, liberation, and even residence in the abode of that Supreme Lord on the strength of his devotional service. Whatever can be obtained as a result of performing fruitive activities, performing severe austerities, cultivating knowledge, renunciation of the objects of the senses, giving in charity, performing pious activities, and controlling the senses are effortlessly obtained by the devotees of the Supreme Lord due to the strength of their devotional service. The devotees of the Lord can easily attain the heavenly planets, relief from material distress, the 5 kinds of liberation, such as Sarishti and residence in Vaikuntha. Okay? But over here we got to understand that devotion, what a devotion really means. Okay? Because sometimes we read about it and we say, yeah, I go to the temple once in a while. I'm a devotee. Or I'm wearing a Om or a little figure of Lord Krishna or Lord Ram. I put tilk and the moli. I'm a devotee. No. But to understand what devotion is, what bhakti is. Okay. So verse number 34. न किंचित साधवो धीरा भक्ता हि एकांतिनो मम वांछन्ते अपि मया दत्तं कैवल्यम अपूर्ण bhavan. Even if I offer liberation from the vicious cycle of repeated birth and death to those pure devotees who are very sober, they do not accept it. Here the word kathanchit somehow or other of the previous verses being explained. In this verse, the word ekantino mam indicate that those who are pure devotees of the Lord are 100% engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, with no separate interest. Okay, so no, nothing else, but only God and God, love for God in the mind. Not even a trace of Maya there. Even if the Lord offers liberation to such devotees, they do not accept it. The pure devotee is assured of going back home, back to Godhead, to reside with the Lord eternally. And so for him, mere liberation without devotional service is not at all appealing. One who engages in the devotional service of the Lord while maintaining a desire for liberation or heavenly enjoyment cannot be considered a pure devotee. The constitutional position of the living entity is that he is the eternal servant of the Lord, and that is being described herein. So only God's sevak. Verse number 35. Nirpeksham param prahu nishreyasam analpam tasman nirashisho bhaktir nivipekshasya me bhavet. The perfection of liberation is achieved when one is completely detached from matter. A devotee who has no personal ambition is eligible for engaging in my loving devotional service. The word nirpeksham means not desiring any other process of perfection and its results. And the word nirashish means one who does not seek personal gain. The word nirapeksha also means to remain aloof from anything not related to Krishna. Those who are completely devoid of desires for personal sense enjoyment are the devotees of the Lord, not those who take no interest in the Lord's devotional service, such as the impersonalists. Only those fortunate souls who have no material desires are able to achieve the platform of unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Undoubtedly, in this age of Kali, people are generally very fallen and polluted by material lust, greed, anger, lamentation, and so forth. In this age, most people are sarvakam or full of material desires. Still, we must understand that simply by taking shelter of the Lord Krishna, we will achieve everything in life. The living entity should not engage in any process except the loving service of the Lord. So it's not that in Kali Yuga we cannot be Bhagat. If we understand it properly, we can be devotees of this caliber. Verse number 36. Namei ekant bhakta naam gun doshodva agna sadhu naam samchita naam buddhe param upeyushama. My unalloyed devotees who are without material attachment, who treat all living entities equally, and who have attained me, who am beyond the reach of material intelligence, are not subject to material piety and impiety, which arise from the good and the evil of this world. It was previously said that the mentality of finding faults and good qualities in itself faulty, and to rise above such a mentality is praiseworthy. This principle is being explained in this verse. Unalloyed devotees of the Lord are not subject to the influence of the modes of goodness, passion, or ignorance, which give birth to all good qualities and faults. The pure devotees possess transcendental qualities because their intelligence is purified. They only aspire to attain the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. It will be explained later on that the mind and the senses of the devotees of the Lord are fully transcendental, and so devotees are not under the jurisdiction of Vedic rules and regulation. Devotees do not acquire piety by their proper conduct, nor do they incur sin by indulging in prohibited activities. While narrating the story of King Chitraketu, Lord Mahadev described the devotee's equal vision in this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Devotees solely engaged to the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. So wherever God keeps us, as long as we can serve God. One should not see a devotee's intense desire to attain the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord as mundane or as a fault. Even if some sinful activities are seen in the life of devotee, one should not see this as a fault. This has been ordered by the Supreme Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita, which says, even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. One should not find faults or discrepancies in the character of an unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Lord. The devotees of the Lord are equal to everyone and are to be considered saintly because they are engaged in the service of the Sachidanand Lord, who is situated beyond the reach of material intelligence. They are not subject to the piety and impiety that are born from the good and the evil of this world. Worldly conceptions create illusion and distinctions in the minds of the living entities, place them in the position of enjoyers. On the other hand, pure devotees who are fully engaged in the Lord's devotional service are not confined to desire for material enjoyment. Let's finish this chapter with verse number 37. Evam etan meyadishtan anutishtanti me patha kshemam vidanti matsanam yad brahm paramam vidu. Those who follow the path of devotional service, as instructed by me, attain freedom from illusion. And upon reaching my personal abode, they perfectly understand the absolute truth. So this is spoken by, all these verses what we studied today are spoken by Lord Krishna. The Lord is here in concluding his discussion of the path of auspiciousness. Those who travel on this path that is instructed by the Lord actually achieve ultimate benefit. The devotees of the Lord reach the abode of the Lord, Vaikunt, whereas the jnanis become merged in Brahma. Unrestricted sense gratification, performance of fruitive activities, engagement in mental speculation cannot be the ultimate religion for the living entities, because these practices are born from aversion to the Lord's service. They are temporary and incomplete. The devotees who follow the instructions of the Supreme Lord become liberated from the clutches of all inauspiciousness. By accepting the path of devotional service, such devotees obtain the ultimate benefit of transferring themselves to the abode of the Supreme Lord. So this ends this chapter. So next week we'll start chapter 15, explanation of the Vedic path. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.